The ping of my phone felt surreal, as if it belonged to someone else. My first real lead, a startup founder in Austin, wanted to talk. 2 years ago, I would have dismissed such an unsolicited message as spam. Now it was a lifeline. I took a shaky breath and tapped back. Absolutely. Let's set up a call. I remember pacing in my tiny River North office, the morning light slanting through the blinds, casting stripes across the bare desk. My hands were clammy against my phone. For the first time in my life, I was entirely responsible for my next move. When the founder, a woman named Pilar Reyes, joined the Zoom call, she greeted me with warm energy. Her background, a colorful mural behind her desk, stood in stark contrast to my minimalist space. She told me she'd built a remote tutoring platform and needed help telling her story to investors. The adjectives tumbled out: visionary, disruptive, transformative. She sounded genuine, vulnerable even. I leaned in, heart pounding, and listened. By the end of the hour, Pilar and I had sketched the bones of a communications strategy. Branding guidelines, press outreach, investor decks. She asked for a proposal by week's end. I started drafting on the spot, fingers dancing across the keyboard, ideas cascading faster than I could jot them down. My phone buzzed again. Ivor. He asked if I'd reconsidered the Barton financial offer. I hesitated, then typed, "I'm pursuing this for now. Thanks." It felt empowering. The first time I'd asserted my own path. I spent the next 3 days immersed in Pilar's world, zooming through her platform's features, interviewing her team, mapping out a media timeline. I sketched logos, drafted taglines, learn your way, unlock potential, and built a narrative. How tutoring wasn't just a service, but a lifeline for students in underserved communities. I pitched headlines. Austin Startup bridges the education gap, one tutoring session at a time. On the fourth morning, I pressed send, a polished 12-page proposal, complete with sample articles, press lists, and a 6-month content calendar. My heart hammered as I clicked send. An hour later, Pilar replied, "This is incredible, Marisol. Let's do it." I nearly dropped my coffee. By noon, I had a signed contract, and Delaney Communications was officially in business. I did a little victory dance in the office. Just me, my desk, and a lone succulent. The thrill was intoxicating, laced with fear. I knew the real work was only beginning. That evening, as Chicago's lights blinked on, Ivor called again. "Seems like you're busy," he said, amusement in his voice. "I am," I said. "You sure you don't want the Barton job? I can introduce you to some people there." I closed my eyes and pictured the ocean of glass walls, the corporate portraits in Lenora's office. The image made me dizzy. "No thanks," I said. "I've got my own clients." He was silent for a moment, then, "Just be careful," he said softly. I wanted to ask, be careful doing what? But I didn't. I said goodnight and hung up. My first invoice to Pilar's company went out the next morning. I felt the weight of responsibility. Delivering results meant more than paycheck. It meant validation, proof that I could stand on my own. The weeks that followed were a blur. Press releases, interview prep, late-night strategy calls across time zones. I hired a virtual assistant, leased a shared co-working space for team meetups, and even attended my first industry event alone. Each small victory built momentum. A local tech blog published Pilar's story. A regional investor magazine featured our case study. Sign-ups on her platform ticked up. And through it all, Ivor's laughter from that call haunted me. Cute? He'd called my dream cute. But with every win, his doubt fueled me. Every article placement, every glowing testimonial, felt like a brick in the foundation of my new identity. Then, one morning, Pilar sent an urgent message. "Marisol, we have a crisis." A headline went viral. "Tutor startup sparks data privacy concerns." I sank into my chair, stomach churning. My heart thudded as I clicked her link. A tech watchdog site accused Pilar's company of mishandling student data. Comments exploded. Distrust, anger, fear. Investors were calling. Parents were canceling subscriptions. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and straightened my shoulders. This was the moment of truth. I typed a quick response. I'm on it. Call me in 5. 10 minutes later, Pilar and her CTO joined a frantic Zoom. I listened as they explained the glitch, an API misconfiguration that exposed user emails. It wasn't malicious, but perception was everything. I took charge. First, we issue an apology and action plan, I said. Transparent, honest. Then we offer affected users free premium access for a month and a dedicated support line. Finally, we'll upload a write-up of our security protocols, full transparency. I'll draft everything now. For the next 48 hours, I lived on adrenaline and coffee. I wrote statements, coached Pilar on her public apology video, prepped her for tough questions, personally answered dozens of parent emails. I felt the pressure sear through me, but I also felt alive, purposeful. When we finally hit publish on our crisis response, I leaned back, fingers trembling. Pilar slumped into her chair, exhausted. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "You saved us." I smiled, but inside, I wondered, did I save my business too? Or was this the beginning of a challenge I might not survive? My phone buzzed, a LinkedIn notification. Barton Financial News. Ivar Barton announces major merger. Ivar was expanding, right when I was fighting to keep one startup afloat. Was his success a taunt or a warning? The question throbbed in my mind as I stared at the screen. And then I heard it, the soft click of the condo door behind me. Before I could turn around, Ivar's voice cut through the silence. "Well, look at you," he said, "saving the day." My heart slammed. What did he want? To be continued. I stood rooted to the spot, my breath catching in my throat as Ivar's silhouette filled the doorway. His tailored suit was immaculate, every crease in place, his expression unreadable in the soft glow of the hallway light. "Hey," he said, voice low, almost casual. But I heard the weight behind that single word. The pause stretched between us, thick with everything we hadn't said. I wanted to run, to slip past him, lock my office door, hide behind spreadsheets and press releases. But something inside me, my stubborn pride, made me linger. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He hesitated, then stepped into the office, closing the door with an almost imperceptible click. Ivar Barton rarely closed doors. He preferred the panorama of glass, the sense of power it gave him. Closing this door felt intentional. "I saw your post," he said, nodding toward my laptop screen. The crisis response statement I'd just finalized glowed on the monitor. "Crisis management. You did good." I swallowed, unsure where praise ended and reproach began. "It's my job." He chuckled, a low sound. "Your job?" "Right." He folded his arms. "Marisol, I laughed when you said you'd start your own consultancy. I was convinced you couldn't handle it." "I can," I said, tension knotting my shoulders. He took a slow breath. "I underestimated you, and I apologize." Shock stalled me. This was new territory, an admission of fault, a crack in his armor of certainty. "But," he continued, "you don't have to do this alone. I can back you. Invest, provide resources." He meant money. Capital to scale Delaney Communications faster than my credit line or small business loan could ever manage. I felt the familiar tug of temptation. The doors this could open. High-profile clients, agency space downtown, a team of full-time staff. But at what cost? He saw my hesitation. "Think about it," he said. "I believe in you. I always have." That was the clincher. A confession worse than criticism. Ivar Barton always believed in me, but only if I played the part he wrote. His support always came with strings: job title, role definitions, expectations. This time he offered equity, seats at the table. He wanted a say in every decision. I shook my head. "Thank you, but no." His brow furrowed. "You're going to turn down an infusion of capital? Just like that?" I squared my shoulders. My independence matters. He stared for a long moment as if weighing the gravity of my words. Then he exhaled, tension draining from his posture. All right. He stepped back. But know this. You're not in this alone. If you ever need me, call. He walked out, leaving the door ajar. I stared at the half-open gap, torn between relief and regret. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed. An email from a former Halcyon Tech colleague offering a freelance project, crafting an investor deck for a fintech startup in Berlin. The timing was uncanny. Another big opportunity. Another chance to cement my reputation internationally. I booked the video conference and spent the afternoon on research. European fintech trends, regulatory landscapes, digital banking narratives. I prepared a skeleton deck outlining key messages: trust, transparency, agility. By evening, I drafted a compelling story arc for the founders, a tale of two siblings who built a digital bank to revolutionize cross-border lending. The call with the Berlin team was electrifying. They were articulate, passionate, driven. When I wrapped up my pitch, they applauded, literally through the screen. We'd love to work with you, the co-founder said. I smiled, the thrill of validation coursing through me. Back in Chicago, I celebrated by pouring a glass of red wine and sitting on the balcony, the city's skyline, a tapestry of lights. My phone buzzed again, this time a news alert. Barton Financial's merger was complete. Their combined assets now dwarfed anyone in our market. I closed the alert. My heart twisted with a strange mix of pride and fear. Ivar had grown stronger. Now I needed to prove I could match him. Not with money or corporate muscle, but with grit, creativity, and fierce independence. Later that night, I drove to a networking event at the Merchandise Mart. The atrium was buzzing with entrepreneurs, investors, consultants, everyone in the Chicago tech scene under one roof. Ivar circulated through the crowd, greeting colleagues with firm handshakes and strategic questions. He looked every bit the alpha. I lingered by the bar, scanning the room for familiar faces. Soon, Pilar appeared. She waved, gliding through the crowd with confidence. She introduced me to other startup founders, each introduction a testament to my growing network. That was when it happened. I felt a presence beside me, a hand brushing against mine. I turned. Standing there was Naomi Caldwell, the editor-in-chief of Tech Pulse magazine. She was known for her razor-sharp interviews and influence in tech journalism. Marisol Delaney, she said, extending her hand. I've heard great things. Pilar speaks highly of you. Heat flushed my cheeks. Thank you. I'm a big fan of your work. She smiled. How would you like to be featured in next month's Rising Titans issue? We profile women founders and leaders changing the game. My heart lodged in my throat. A feature in Tech Pulse could catapult Delaney Communications into the spotlight. I swallowed, searching her eyes. I'd be honored. As the evening wound down, I left with a sense of momentum pulsing through me. Ivar approached me near the exit. His expression was unreadable. Looks like you've made some waves tonight, he said. I met his gaze. I'm just getting started. He studied me, a slow smile creeping across his face. Good, he said. I expect big things from you, Marisol. I nodded. So do I. Walking to my car, I realized the real game had begun. I was no longer fighting to survive. I was fighting to win on my own terms. And yet, beneath the exhilaration, a cold question lurked. What if this path led to a showdown neither of us could avert? Tomorrow I would find out, even with Naomi Caldwell's invitation lingering in my mind. The next morning felt like waking on a high wire without a safety net. My River North office was quieter at dawn, the city below hushed. I unfolded the Tech Pulse email deadline in 2 weeks. Ivar's offer of investment, Pilar's trust, Berlin's fintech chance, Tech Pulse's feature, all converging. It was intoxicating, but I could feel the pressure coiling tighter in my chest. I opened my calendar and blocked out time. Content drafts, investor deck for Berlin, interview prep with Naomi, client check-ins, and, most daunting, building a formal pitch deck to approach VCs for my own seed round. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharpening my focus. I needed structure, but structure couldn't contain the whirlwind Ivor unleashed later that morning. He stood outside my office with 2 coffees in hand, my preferred oat latte and his black Americano. He didn't knock. His presence was a challenge. "Thought you'd like a refill," he said, sliding the latte across. "Mind if I come in?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. His gaze roamed my workspace. The simple desk, the succulent, the ring light perched precariously in the corner. A reminder of my upcoming TechPulse video feature. "TechPulse," he said, raising an eyebrow. "That's big." "I'm doing an interview," I said, trying to sound casual. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What's the angle?" I braced myself. Would he steer the conversation to me being his wife? My fear was they'd frame it as a partnership, not my solo success. I took a breath. "It's about independent women entrepreneurs. My story as a consultant who built her own firm from scratch." He nodded slowly. "And the husband's story?" I met his gaze. "Isn't part of any entrepreneurial journey overcoming doubt? Mine was fueled by humiliation. Your laughter." He blinked, eyes flashing. "You're going to bring that up?" I shrugged. "It's part of who I am." He leaned back, exhaling. "Fair enough." Our conversation hung, as if the office walls themselves waited for my next move. Then he said, "I have a call in 10 minutes. I'll let you get to work." And with that, he was gone. I stared at the latte. The foam art half melted. My heart pounded. Respect tinged with the familiar ache of wounded pride. Our relationship had always been a crucible for my ambition, his doubt igniting my determination. That afternoon I sat in front of the ring light, eyes fixed on the script I'd drafted. My reflection stared back. A woman poised, resolute, but with an ember of vulnerability in her gaze. The subject: from corporate cut to corporate clout. I rehearsed lines aloud, each sentence sharpening my narrative. The cameraman, a freelance videographer named Lucas, nodded through the monitor. "That was great. Can you say, I realized my worth was never tied to a paycheck, with more conviction?" I repeated, infusing it with the memory of that morning's tension. When we wrapped, Lucas packed up, leaving me alone with Naomi's questions. She wanted to explore my personal journey, the emotional roller coaster, the moment I decided independence was priceless. By dusk, I'd recorded B-roll. Me walking through the city, working at my desk, laughing with Pilar over Zoom. The footage would paint the arc, from uncertainty to triumph. Next, I tackled the seed round pitch deck. Ivor's offer to invest tempted me. His check could accelerate growth. But independence again whispered in my ear. I opened a blank slide titled Market Opportunity. I sketched the TAM, total addressable market, for B2B communications consulting, the serviceable obtainable market client segments. Then my competitive edge: specialized crisis management drawn from real crises, a global network from Halcyon Tech and Berlin startups, a personal brand with growing media presence. Hours blurred as I layered data, anecdotes, visual mock-ups. At midnight, my laptop glowed in the dark office, the slide count standing at 25. On my way out, Ivor awaited in the hallway. "You working late?" he asked. I nodded. "Pitch deck." He peered at my screen. "Looking solid." I swallowed. "Will you consider investing?" His gaze flicked to the screen, then back. "Send it over." I exhaled. A small victory. Even with Naomi Caldwell's invitation lingering in my mind, the next morning felt like waking on a high wire without a safety net. My River North office was quieter at dawn, the city below hushed. I unfolded the TechPulse email deadline in 2 weeks. Ivor's offer of investment, Pilar's trust, Berlin's fintech chance, TechPulse's feature, all converging. It was intoxicating, but I could feel the pressure coiling tighter in my chest. I opened my calendar and blocked out time. Content drafts, investor deck for Berlin, interview prep with Naomi, client check-ins, and, most daunting, building a formal pitch deck to approach VCs for my own seed round. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharpening my focus. I needed structure, But structure couldn't contain the whirlwind Ivor unleashed later that morning. He stood outside my office with 2 coffees in hand, my preferred oat latte and his black Americano. He didn't knock. His presence was a challenge. "Thought you'd like a refill," he said, sliding the latte across. "Mind if I come in?" I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. His gaze roamed my workspace. The simple desk, the succulent, the ring light perched precariously in the corner. A reminder of my upcoming TechPulse video feature. "TechPulse," he said, raising an eyebrow. "That's big." "I'm doing an interview," I said, trying to sound casual. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What's the angle?" I braced myself. Would he steer the conversation to me being his wife? My fear was they'd frame it as a partnership, not my solo success. I took a breath. "It's about independent women entrepreneurs. My story as a consultant who built her own firm from scratch." He nodded slowly. "And the husband's story?" I met his gaze. "Isn't part of any entrepreneurial journey overcoming doubt? Mine was fueled by humiliation. Your laughter." He blinked, eyes flashing. "You're going to bring that up?" I shrugged. "It's part of who I am." He leaned back, exhaling. "Fair enough." Our conversation hung, as if the office walls themselves waited for my next move. Then he said, "I have a call in 10 minutes. I'll let you get to work." And with that, he was gone. I stared at the latte. The foam art half melted. My heart pounded. Respect tinged with the familiar ache of wounded pride. Our relationship had always been a crucible for my ambition, his doubt igniting my determination. That afternoon I sat in front of the ring light, eyes fixed on the script I'd drafted. My reflection stared back. A woman poised, resolute, but with an ember of vulnerability in her gaze. The subject: from corporate cut to corporate clout. I rehearsed lines aloud, each sentence sharpening my narrative. The cameraman, a freelance videographer named Lucas, nodded through the monitor. "That was great. Can you say, I realized my worth was never tied to a paycheck, with more conviction?" I repeated, infusing it with the memory of that morning's tension. When we wrapped, Lucas packed up, leaving me alone with Naomi's questions. She wanted to explore my personal journey, the emotional roller coaster, the moment I decided independence was priceless. By dusk, I'd recorded B-roll. Me walking through the city, working at my desk, laughing with Pilar over Zoom. The footage would paint the arc, from uncertainty to triumph. Next, I tackled the seed round pitch deck. Ivor's offer to invest tempted me. His check could accelerate growth. But independence again whispered in my ear. I opened a blank slide titled Market Opportunity. I sketched the TAM, total addressable market, for B2B communications consulting, the serviceable obtainable market client segments. Then my competitive edge: specialized crisis management drawn from real crises, a global network from Halcyon Tech and Berlin startups, a personal brand with growing media presence. Hours blurred as I layered data, anecdotes, visual mock-ups. At midnight, my laptop glowed in the dark office, the slide count standing at 25. On my way out, Ivor awaited in the hallway. "You working late?" he asked. I nodded. "Pitch deck." He peered at my screen. "Looking solid." I swallowed. "Will you consider investing?" His gaze flicked to the screen, then back. "Send it over." I exhaled. A small victory. The next morning, Ivor emailed terms, a convertible note, modest equity. Still, it was a compromise. Capital with no strings attached beyond a seat on my advisory board. I signed and felt a surge of relief. My independence was intact. But the real test arrived moments later. An urgent call from Naomi Caldwell. "Marisol, change of plans," she said. "We want to pivot the story. Focus on your relationship with your husband. Conflict, emotion, that raw spark. Our readers eat that up." My pulse quickened. This was the line. Expose the fracture or guard my brand? I paused before replying. "Let's talk." Within minutes, Ivor joined the call, surprise in his eyes. Naomi jumped right in. "We want to tell your story through the lens of..." What happens when your biggest supporter becomes your fiercest skeptic? Ivor's expression hardened. Our story? Naomi's voice was silky. It sells. It connects. People relate to those conflicts. I swallowed. My heart raced. Exposing our marriage might boost visibility, but would it cost me my autonomy? Our alliance was delicate, a dance between respect and rivalry. I cleared my throat. I appreciate the angle, Naomi, but I want the focus on my journey, my clients, my crisis management, the value I bring. My husband's role is relevant, but he's not the centerpiece. Naomi exchanged a look with Ivor, then nodded. Fair enough. We'll weave him in as a supporting character. Your foil, not the headline. Ivor reached for my hand on the desk. In that moment, I felt both the tether and the freedom of our bond. As the call ended, I felt a rush of triumph and vulnerability. The narrative was mine to shape. Outside, dawn broke over the city. Part of me longed for calm. Another part thrived on the storm. Tomorrow, I'd tackle Berlin's investor deck, finalize Naomi's edits, launch a marketing campaign for Pilar's platform, and pitch my own startup to VCs. All before the sun set on another city skyline. Yet as I walked back through the glass doors, I heard a soft ping. A new email from Barton Financial's legal team. Subject: confidential, merger clause review. And just like that, the next battle line was drawn between us, in boardrooms and bedrooms alike. The Barton Financial legal email was more than just paperwork. It was a gauntlet thrown down at my feet. As I clicked it open, my pulse surged. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through the office window, turning dust motes into golden motes swirling around me. The subject line read, Review of Merger Clause, Potential Impact on Spousal Equity. Ivor's name glowed in my inbox, alongside stern legalese. Merger Clause, Equity, Spousal Rights. Words that could shift the ground beneath me faster than any layoff ever could. I closed the email and leaned back, pressing my palms into my eyes. My journey, my fight for independence, had come to a head. If Barton Financial's merger terms impacted me legally, they could jeopardize the equity we'd negotiated. I needed clarity. I summoned resourcefulness Marisol. I opened a fresh doc, titled Merger Impact Analysis, and began dissecting the clause line by line. I copied snippets. Greater than, in the event of a merger or acquisition, spousal equity shall be subject to review by the board's compensation committee. I highlighted spousal equity in yellow. Questions flooded my mind. Was my protective convertible note somehow tied to our marriage? Could a future board decision override our agreement? I tagged my corporate lawyer. Need urgent read on potential spousal equity triggers. While I waited, I shifted gears. Today was also the day I'd mapped out Berlin's investor deck and had my final playbook chat with Pilar. By early evening, I hopped on a call with my Berlin team. The time difference meant they were just settling in. I presented the refined deck, slides restructured for German investor sensibilities, emphasis on regulatory compliance, sustainable growth metrics, clear exit strategies. I told their co-founder, investors here value stability as much as innovation. We need to show the dual heart of your story, passion for disruption, coupled with disciplined execution. They nodded, impressed. They suggested adding a slide on European data privacy, tying back to the crisis I'd managed. I smiled. My past challenges had become future selling points. Next, I debriefed Pilar. The tutoring platform's new beta feature was launching in 2 weeks. AI-driven, personalized learning paths. We storyboarded a campaign, press launch, influencer partnerships, educational conferences. We'll ride the wave of EdTech buzz at South by Southwest Edu, I told her. It's perfect timing. She laughed, throwing her head back as she often did when excitement bubbled over. You're a machine, Marisol. I bristled at the compliment. It felt like she saw me only as work, not the person beneath, but I swallowed it. We're a team, I said, offering my best smile. My phone buzzed. My lawyer's note. Clause seems specifically designed to protect Barton family interests in case of a hostile takeover. Your convertible note is not subject to spousal review. But your advisory seat may have voting implications. I exhaled. Relief washed through me, but the caveat stung. Voting implications. My ability to shape decisions at Barton Financial could expose me to conflicts I wasn't ready to navigate. I spent the rest of the night drafting questions for Ivor. Direct, but measured. I'd handle this head on. No more sidestepping his world. Midway through this whirlwind, I glanced at the calendar and realized we were halfway to delivering the promised 20 parts. 5 down, 15 to go. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The next morning, I found Ivor in the conference room, reviewing merger presentations with his CFO. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Marisol," he said coolly, "didn't expect to see you here." I squared my shoulders. "We need to talk about the merger clause." His eyes narrowed slightly. "I thought you were busy with Berlin." "My Berlin deck is done. Pilar's campaign is on track. This is a priority." He gestured to the empty chair. I sat, feeling the hum of the overhead lights. He steepled his fingers. "What's your concern?" I laid out the legal memo, highlighting key passages. "Your board's compensation committee could reclassify my equity rights under spousal review. That undermines our agreement." He sighed, leaning back. "That clause is standard for any executive spouse. It protects both sides. But you're not an executive of Barton Financial." "I have an advisory seat," I said. "That seat carries weight. If the board decides I vote on a critical issue, they could question my equity." He was silent. "Then, I'll talk to the committee. They'll carve out an exception." My heart pounded. "Can I get that in writing?" He met my gaze. "Yes, tomorrow, first thing. A promise. But in boardrooms, words could twist. Over the next 24 hours, everything happened at once. Naomi's team sent interview questions. How did your husband's laughter fuel your ambition? I drafted responses that balanced real emotion with brand control. Berlin investors requested a follow-up call, rescheduled for Friday. Pilar's feature article needed final edit. And my lawyer forwarded a red-lined amendment from Barton Financial's counsel, an explicit carve-out for my convertible note and voting rights. The amendment looked good, but every scratched outline reminded me of the power they held. I scheduled a call with Barton's general counsel to finalize. That evening, I retreated to my balcony. The city pulsed below. Headlights, train horns, distant laughter. Ivor joined silently, taking the chair beside me. We watched the lights. He broke the silence. "You're making moves faster than I anticipated." I turned to him. "This is the only way I know." He nodded. "And I underestimated you." The vulnerability in his voice surprised me. For a moment, the barriers between us felt to crack. But as the winds swept over Lake Michigan, I felt the chill of tomorrow's board call. The stakes, my equity, my independence, our relationship. Northern lights of street lamps flickered across his face. I realized then, whatever happened next wouldn't just define Delaney Communications, it would define us. The boardroom felt colder than the winter winds howling outside. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table, surrounded by Barton Financial's top brass. Every face carved from corporate stone, every gaze assessing me like I was a multivariate equation to solve. At one end sat Jasper Cole, the legal counsel I'd just met via conference call. At the other, Diana Fields, the compensation committee chair, a woman whose reputation for ruthlessness preceded her. I cleared my throat, my pulse echoing in my ears. "Thank you for convening on such short notice," I began, sliding the amendment across the table. The paper was crisp, the language explicit. Marisol Delaney's convertible note and advisory voting rights are exempt from spousal merger clause provisions. It was the victory I'd fought for, proof that my independence had teeth. Jasper adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Delaney, the language is thorough. However, the committee has concerns about setting a precedent for spouses of executives. How do you propose we address that?" Diana tapped her pen. "We need to ensure this exception remains unique to your case." My chest tightened. I'd anticipated pushback. Then let's codify it as a one-time amendment, specifically tied to Barton Financial's merger with Grand Harbor Holdings. Once that transaction closes, the clause reverts to standard terms. That way, no future spouses can reference this. Silence reigned. Then Jasper leaned forward, eyes steely. That solves the precedent issue, but we need assurance your advisory position won't present a conflict of interest with Delaney Communications clients. I nodded. I'll sign a recusal agreement. Any matter involving Barton Financial's interests, I abstain from voting. Full transparency and documentation. Diana exchanged a look with Jasper. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded. Very well, we'll draft the amendment accordingly. Sign here and here. I signed with a flourish, though my hand shook. The amendment was mine. Proof of change in a world built to resist it. As I gathered my things, Jasper offered a curt nod of respect. Diana, for once, cracked a half-smile. You're persistent, Ms. Delaney. Outside the boardroom, I inhaled deeply, the victory bittersweet. The corridor's fluorescent lights felt harsh against my flushed cheeks. Ivor met me at the door, his expression unreadable. Congratulations, he said softly. You navigated that well. I managed a smile. Thanks. Let's hope it holds. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, a rare touch of warmth. It will. Later that afternoon, I returned to my office to find stacks of paperwork and emails demanding my attention. Berlin wanted final revisions. Pilar requested edits to her South by Southwest plenary speech. Naomi's team needed B-roll captions. And a new email from a VC firm. Interested in Delaney Communications. Let's discuss partnership. I stared at the subject line. Potential partnership. Elevate equity partners. My heart leapt. Equity partners could fuel growth beyond a convertible note. I scheduled the call for the next day and dove into preparing a partnership proposal. Revenue sharing models, management structures, brand integration plans. That night, Ivor and I met for dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. White tablecloths, low lighting, the kind of place where deals were struck over shared plates of gnocchi. I filled him in on the boardroom outcome, the VC interest, the endless client work. He listened, sipping Chianti, the amber liquid glowing against his wine glass. So, he said, leaning back, what's next? I traced the rim of my glass. I pitch equity partners tomorrow, finalize Naomi's profile edits, prep for Berlin, and launch the South by Southwest campaign. He raised an eyebrow. You might burn out. I smiled, though fatigue tugged at my eyelids. I thrive on the rush. He reached across the table, thumb brushing my knuckles. Just promise you'll slow down if you need to. I nodded. I promise. Walking home through the crisp night air, I realized Ivor's concern was genuine. Our bond was shifting from rivalry to mutual respect. But as we turned the corner onto Michigan Avenue, my phone buzzed. A breaking news alert. Headline: Grand Harbor merger faces regulatory scrutiny. My stomach dropped. The merger I'd just carved out an exception for was now in jeopardy. We hurried home to my office, where I tracked every news outlet. The Federal Reserve and antitrust regulators were probing the merger's impact on market competition. Barton Financial might have to renegotiate or even abandon the deal. Ivor sank into a chair, shock and frustration flickering across his face. This can't be happening now. I placed a hand on his arm. We anticipated this. You have legal teams ready. We navigated the amendment. This too, we'll navigate. He looked at me with a new intensity. You're more resourceful than I ever gave you credit for. I gave him a confident smile, but inside, a knot formed. Every step forward seemed to spark a new crisis. If the merger collapsed, would my amendment hold any value? Would Barton Financial's support vanish, taking my advisory seat with it? The nights stretched on as we strategized possible outcomes. Negotiation points, contingency plans, messaging for investors and clients. The glowing city outside felt indifferent to our personal stakes. Long after midnight, I sat back, adrenaline still coursing through me. The next morning would bring calls with Barton's legal team, regulatory experts, and my VC prospects. My independence was on the line, on two fronts: Delaney Communications' growth and Barton Financial's future. But one truth shone through the uncertainty. I was no longer the scared woman polishing press releases. I was a strategist, a negotiator, a force. And whether the merger soared or sank, I would steer my own course. Tomorrow, the next battle begins. The dawn light filtered through the blinds as I sat at my desk, the hum of notifications a steady drumbeat in my ears. My laptop screen displayed 3 blinking windows: the VC's meeting reminder, a thread of urgent emails from Barton Financial's legal team, and Pilar's South by Southwest agenda. My head weighed heavy, each thought pressing against the other. I took a deep breath, grounding myself. Today, everything hung in the balance. Whether the merger with Grand Harbor would proceed, whether my convertible note remained safe, and whether Delaney Communications could capitalize on a potential new partnership. First, the VC call. I dialed into Elevate Equity Partners, my palms damp against the polished wood of the conference table. The lead partner, Marcus Jameson, joined after a brief greeting, his expression unreadable as his webcam flickered to life. "Marisol Delaney," he began, voice measured. "We've reviewed your deck. Impressive." I offered a nod. "Thank you, Mr. Jameson. I appreciate the time you've taken." He leaned forward. "Your growth trajectory is solid, but we're curious about your ties to Barton Financial. How does your advisory role there impact your availability and potential conflicts?" I exhaled, prepared. My advisory role is governed by a recusal agreement. I'm fully committed to Delaney Communications clients. The Barton advisory position is ceremonial. No voting on client-related matters. My focus remains here. Marcus studied me for a moment. "That's reassuring. And the merger situation?" I summarized the regulatory scrutiny in our contingency plans: alternative financing, messaging strategies, legal avenues. He nodded. "Your resilience is commendable. We're prepared to offer a Series A lead of $5 million, with standard board participation. Terms would be outlined next week." My heart lurched. This could propel Delaney Communications into a new era: hiring staff, expanding internationally, building a proper agency. "Thank you," I said, voice steady. "I look forward to reviewing the term sheet." We wrapped the call, and my shoulders, which felt encased in armor, relaxed. Next, Barton's legal team pinged me. Regulators had issued a preliminary approval notice, contingent on certain market adjustments. The merger could proceed in exchange for divestiture of specific lending assets, a complexity but far from a collapse. I drafted a congratulatory email to Ivor, peppered with strategic suggestions for navigating the asset carve-out. The weight on my chest lifted. Our amendment would stand. By midday, Pilar and I confirmed final plans for South by Southwest. Her keynote would highlight data transparency, personalized learning, and the company's mission story angles I'd pitched. Our campaign aligned with the launch of the AI feature, generating buzz across educational circles. As I reviewed speaker logistics, Naomi's assistant called. The Tech Pulse piece had moved to feature status, prominent placement in the print and online editions. They needed final quotes and one last headshot. I sent them a succinct email, balancing personal narrative with professional insights. An hour later, Naomi replied, "Stellar. We'll have the magazine in seats across Chicago by next month." A cascade of small victories bolstered my confidence. Yet beneath the wins, a tension simmered. The closer Delaney Communications edged toward legitimacy, the more Ivor's world and mine risked collision. That evening, I convened a strategy huddle with my fledgling team, the virtual assistant, a part-time graphic designer I'd hired, and Lucas, the videographer. We outlined deliverables, client onboarding processes, social media calendars, press outreach, investor relations materials. My desk overflowed with Post-it notes and color-coded spreadsheets. We ended the call with a cheer, our collective ambition palpable even through screens. Later, I walked through the Loop's streets, the skyscrapers towering overhead. Ivor joined me, side by side but on separate paths. He glanced at my phone, glowing with a notification. Series A lead confirmed. His smile was proud, almost tender. "You did it." I felt the electricity of accomplishment, but also a pang of solitude. "We did it," I corrected, nodding toward my team's triumphs. He took my hand, and for a moment, the city noises faded. But as we turned toward home, a headline on our neighbor's newspaper stand caught my eye. "Women-led startups boom, but face hidden funding gaps." I stared at the words. Funding gaps, hidden barriers. I had navigated many, but for every victory, new walls emerged. I squared my shoulders, meeting Ivor's gaze. "My journey isn't just about me," I said softly. "It's about every woman who's told she can't, and then does." He squeezed my hand. "Tell me who they are." That night, as we parted ways at the condo door, I realized the next chapters would demand more than strategy. They would require daring, solidarity, and the courage to rewrite the rules. Tomorrow, Delaney Communications would sign the term sheet, Barton Financial would finalize the amendment, and Pilar's platform would launch its biggest innovation yet. But the real story, my story, was just beginning to reshape the world around me. The morning sun glinted off the river, turning Chicago's skyline into a tapestry of glittering steel and glass. I sat at my desk, breathing in the hum of a world waking up, and gearing up for Delaney Communications' next big leap. Today was signing day. The term sheet with Elevate Equity Partners would be finalized, and my company would officially secure the $5 million Series A. I sorted through the final documents, each page a milestone: vesting schedules, board seats, liquidation preferences. My pulse thrummed with anticipation and a flicker of doubt. Would I still recognize Delaney Communications when the dust settled? Would the investors steer my vision toward profit over purpose? The conference call began promptly. Marcus Jameson's voice filled the speakers as we walked through signatures, initialing amendments, agreeing on meeting schedules. When he said, "Congratulations, Marisol," his tone was both professional and warm. I exhaled, relief washing over me. As the call ended, I raised a glass of sparkling water in a quiet solo toast. The office phone rang. Barton Financial's General Counsel. "Ms. Delaney," he said, "the finalized amendment is ready. We'll file it today. Congratulations on your Series A." I smiled. "Thank you, and thank you for your support." He hesitated. "One more thing. The board wants to extend an offer. A non-voting advisory committee position with a stipend." A stipend? It was unexpected. My convertible note was still more valuable. Why the stipend, if no vote? I paused. Why the stipend? "To acknowledge your advisory contributions and time commitment," he said. "Consider it symbolic." I sensed a gambit, money to bind me closer. My independence felt sutured again. "Appreciate it," I said. "Let me discuss with my team." I ended the call and stared at the stipendiary offer. A small golden cage. Ivor found me writing furiously in a notebook. I showed him the email. He frowned. "It undermines the convertible note exception," he said. "They're affirming control." I tore the paper from my notebook. "I'll counter with an honorarium. One-time payment for my input. Not recurring." He nodded approvingly. "Good move." Next, I pivoted to Pilar, who awaited me on Zoom. Her platform's AI feature had launched overnight, and sign-ups spiked. Data dashboards glowed green. Her excitement crackled through the screen. "We've hit 10,000 new users in 24 hours, she said, her voice trembling with joy. I grinned. "Your story's resonating." She blew out a breath. "All thanks to you." I waved it off. Team effort. We outlined next steps. Case studies, parent testimonials, educational partnerships. The momentum was intoxicating. On to Naomi's piece. I reviewed the published story online. The headline read, "Marisol Delaney, from corporate cut to founder force." Beneath it, a photo of me framed by office lights, hair pulled back, confidence etched in my eyes. Comments streamed in, inspiring. "Role model. Go girl." I felt a swell of pride, and the uncanny sensation of watching myself through thousands of screens. By afternoon, I sat with my graphic designer, approving the final branding for Delaney's growth. New logo variants, brand guidelines, typefaces. The identity was evolving, more refined and bold. As evening fell, I walked to the condo rooftop with Ivor. The city sprawled beneath us, a sea of lights and possibilities. I turned to him. "We've accomplished so much." He nodded. "You've accomplished so much." My heart fluttered at the emphasis. "What's on the horizon?" I asked. His gaze drifted to the distant horizon. "Expansion. Europe, Asia, and perhaps a joint venture." I swallowed. "Joint venture?" He met my eyes. "Barton Financial has a portfolio of clients in renewable energy. Your communications expertise could elevate them. I propose we team up. Delaney handles their PR, crisis management, brand storytelling." The proposition shimmered with opportunity and risk. A deeper tether between us, corporate and personal. I studied his face. "I'll consider it, but on Delaney's terms. No loss of independence." He smiled, relief mingling with admiration. "Whatever you decide, I trust you'll guide us both well." I knew this decision would chart our future, and Delaney Communications' fate. Tomorrow I'd draft my counteroffer on the stipend, craft a proposal for the joint venture, and prepare to navigate the new world we were creating. The next chapter beckoned, a fusion of personal and professional that would test every boundary I'd fought to establish. I woke to raindrops pattering against the window, the gray light of dawn seeping into my office. Coffee was a comfort I couldn't skip. Tonight's late-night strategy session replayed in my mind. I drafted counterterms for the advisory stipend and sketched an outline for the joint venture proposal with Barton Financial. Now it was time to refine, send, and manage the fallout. My first meeting was with the design team, a final check on Delaney's refreshed website. The splash page now declared, "Empowering brands, elevating voices," a tagline I adored. We tested responsiveness across devices, adjusted color contrasts, and ensured the copy reflected our core narrative: independence, empathy, strategic foresight. Next, I settled into the leather chair in Ivor's office, an unusual move. His workspace, bathed in morning light, felt different from my River North loft. It was another realm: polished surfaces, financial tickers scrolling, portraits of past CEOs gazing down. I slid the counteroffer across, a one-time honorarium of $50,000, acknowledging my advisory contributions, with no ongoing stipend or obligations beyond the existing convertible note and recusal agreement. And a separate proposal, a joint venture framework, outlining Delaney's scope, revenue sharing, intellectual property ownership, and governance structures. He read silently, fingers steepled. After a moment, he looked up. "The honorarium is reasonable," he said. "The joint venture, ambitious." I nodded. "It's a bold step, but together we could build something neither company could on its own." He leaned back, considering. "Let me discuss with the board. I'll get back to you." I left his office, the weight of waiting settling on my shoulders. As I exited the elevator, my phone vibrated. Naomi Caldwell's text. "Interview went viral. Social engagement off the charts. Call me." I dialed her number, heart racing. "Marisol," Naomi said, voice bright. "Your feature sparked a movement. We've been invited to host a panel on women leadership at the next Tech Pulse Summit. Are you in?" My pulse surged. "Absolutely," she laughed. "Consider it done." I agreed, plotting time for summit preparations alongside everything else. By midday, I dove into my inbox. Pilar had a last-minute PR crisis, an unflattering tweet mischaracterizing her platform's AI as invasive. I drafted a rapid response: apology, clarification, open dialogue invitation. Within hours, we'd turned a narrative crisis into a story of corporate responsibility. I messaged Ivor, awaiting board feedback on JV, sent crisis response for Pilar. Summit panel confirmed. His reply was a simple thumbs-up emoji. I grabbed lunch, a quick salad, and dialed the VC firm to discuss term sheet details. They requested minor tweaks, adjusting vesting cliffs and expanding governance rights. I negotiated firmly, ensuring my control remained strong. By late afternoon, I stepped into a glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor. My virtual assistant and designer joined via screen. I shared updates: stipend counter, JV proposal, summit panel, VC tweaks. Their excitement crackled through the speakers. Marisol, my designer said. The panel needs branding. Should we use Delaney's look or a co-brand with TechPulse? I thought of Naomi's readership and my brand's voice. Go with a co-brand lockup, Delaney x TechPulse. We'll show collaboration. As the call ended, I exhaled, exhilarated and exhausted. Evening fell as I walked to my apartment, rain still tapping the pavement. Ivor met me with umbrellas. We walked in silence, the city lights reflecting on wet asphalt. Upstairs, I found an envelope resting on our kitchen island. In my handwriting, decision memo, joint venture status and honorarium. Ivor stood by the window reading. He looked at me and there it was, his answer. Honorarium approved, he said. JV. The board has reservations about branding overlap. They'd need a pilot project first. Start small, see results. I nodded, masking my disappointment with understanding. A pilot is fine. Could we propose a dedicated client, renewable energy lead, at 10% revenue share? He smiled. I'll push for it. I felt the thrill of negotiation. Not final victory, but progress. Later, as I lay in bed, my mind spun with the day's wins and loose ends. Delaney Communications was on the cusp of transformation, and my partnership with Barton Financial had evolved from contention to collaboration. But with each advance, the stakes climbed higher. One misstep, a term sheet tweak, a PR misfire, a boardroom hesitation, could topple everything. I closed my eyes, determination blazing. Tomorrow, the pilot proposal will land, the summit panel will galvanize leaders, and Pilar's platform will reach new heights. He ran his finger down the KPIs section. Strong. I think they'll approve. I nodded. Thank you for pushing this through. He paused. I've also adjusted the honorarium to a one-time $75,000 at your request. Relief and pride flooded me. I appreciate that. We signed. The pens click a rhythmic victory. Next, TechPulse Summit prep with Naomi. Over coffee in her office, we rehearsed my keynote delivery and refined the panel flow. She coached me on timing, anecdotes, and audience engagement. Remember, your story is your power, she reminded me. I took notes, internalizing her advice. Later, I met with Sophia Lee, manager of Barton's Renewable Energy Fund, via video conference. She reviewed the JV proposal on screen, nodding at each section. This aligns perfectly with our goals, she said. I see a clear path. We start with the pilot, then expand to full service in Q1 after results. I smiled. Exactly. She paused. One question. How do we measure long-term brand equity? I leaned forward. Through media sentiment analysis, investor surveys, brand awareness metrics. I'll deliver monthly dashboards with qualitative reports. Sophia beamed. I'm impressed. We agreed to draft a master services agreement. I sat back, my chest tight with the buzz of success. On my balcony that evening, Ivor joined me again, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. You were fantastic today, he said. I smiled, leaning into him. Couldn't have done it without your support. He kissed my forehead. You did it all, Marisol. The warmth of his words was a balm on every scar from my journey. Yet as we stood there, the sharp scent of ozone carried on the breeze, I felt a pulse of anticipation. The summit, the JV expansion, Pilar's next phase, all converging. The path before me glowed with promise and peril. Tomorrow, I'd finalize the Renewable Fund's Master Services Agreement, deliver the pilot kickoff for Barton, and step onto the TechPulse stage. And when I took that stage, I would carry every lesson learned. That loss can light a fire, that laughter can become fuel, and that independence is the engine of transformation. The second half of the story was about to begin, and I was ready to lead the way. Stepping onto the TechPulse Summit stage felt like walking into a dream. The lights were bright enough to blur the audience, but I focused on Naomi's reassuring smile in the front row. My heart hammered as I took the podium, the mic cool against my palm. Good morning, I began, voice clear. I'm Marisol Delaney. 2 years ago, I lost my job. My husband laughed. Today, I stand here, the founder of Delaney Communications, to share how doubt became my greatest ally. The crowd leaned in as I mapped my journey, the severance email, the sting of his laughter, the first tentative client call, the crash of the Pilar data crisis, the boardroom battles, and the Series A victory. I wove in data, growth metrics, media placements, user engagement figures, so the story resonated with both hearts and minds. I paused for effect. My biggest lesson? The stories we tell ourselves define our futures. Don't let external validation be your compass. Forge your own narrative. The applause swelled. My smile felt genuine, unguarded. The panel discussion that followed crackled with energy. I posed my questions, shared insights, and engaged with fellow leaders. Cameras flashed. Social media lit up with live tweets. #DelaneyRising, #WomenHolid. Backstage, Naomi hugged me. "You crushed it." I laughed, adrenaline buzzing. "Thanks." As I collected my things, I felt the subtle vibration of my phone. A new email from Barton Financial. Subject: Pilot Campaign Kickoff. Next steps. I opened it to find a detailed schedule. Strategy meeting, press release timeline, investor outreach calendar. The pilot was officially live. My phone buzzed again. Pilar. She told me signups doubled after our campaign launch. Then a note from Sophia. Fund board approved full JV expansion pending pilot review. I exhaled. The dominoes were falling in our favor. That evening, Ivor met me at a celebratory dinner hosted by Naomi. The table was a mosaic of industry luminaries, investors, and entrepreneurs, all congratulating me. I felt the weight of every achievement, hard-earned and shimmering like stars. I caught Ivor's eye. He raised his glass. I toasted him silently, the skeptic who became my ally. Under the chandelier's glow, I realized our partnership had transcended personal and corporate realms. It had become a shared vision, one that could reshape industries. But as midnight approached, I slipped away to my office, craving the solitude of unfinished tasks. My inbox glowed with the next day's agenda: final JV negotiations, Berlin follow-up, TechPulse recap blog. Ivor joined me, silhouetted in the doorway. Long night? I turned, fatigue and fulfillment etched on my face. The journey never ends. He smiled. And that's why I love you. I felt a warmth spread through me. But beneath it, a cool current of awareness. The summit's spotlight faded with the dawn, replaced by the unrelenting rhythm of deadlines and deliverables. Tomorrow, the pilot's metrics would come in. The JV terms would be fine-tuned. Berlin's investors awaited the final deck. Pilar's next feature needed my review. And somewhere between the victories and the battles, I would decide. Was I simply surviving the story I'd written? Or was I ready to redefine the entire narrative? To be continued. The morning after the summit, the world felt different. Sharper, louder, like the city itself had turned up the volume. I sat at my kitchen island, a mug of black coffee warming my hands, replaying the applause in the sea of faces from the TechPulse stage. That high still tingled in my bones, but the reality pressing on my inbox reminded me there was no time to bask. I pulled up the pilot campaign's first metrics. Media placements had doubled Barton's expectations, with investor engagement trending upward by 20%. I smiled. The performance clause I'd fought for was paying off. Proof of concept for the bigger joint venture. Next, Berlin. I logged into the early call with the co-founders, their breath visible in the webcam frame. It was freezing there. They reviewed my final investor pitch deck slide by slide. Questions came rapid fire. How do we position this story for European regulators? What media outlets feel trustworthy to conservative investors? How do we handle a sudden pivot if funding lags? I answered each, calm but candid. By the end, their nods felt like gold. We're ready to close our seed round, Marisol, the older sibling said. We want you on retainer after that. Another piece locked in place. By mid-afternoon, my River North office pulsed with life. Lucas shot new brand visuals for our website refresh. My assistant drafted a blog post recapping the TechPulse Summit. And my designer polished the press kit for Barton's renewable fund. Ivor dropped by unannounced, a box of croissants in hand. Breakfast for the team? He asked, with that half grin I was learning to read all over again. I accepted with a tired smile. You're getting good at this partner thing. He leaned on my desk, studying the Berlin deck spread before me. You're rewriting the rulebook, Marisol. I caught the flicker in his eyes, something between admiration and fear, because the stronger I grew, the more our worlds intertwined, the clearer it became. My independence didn't threaten just him, but every system that had once held me small. We sat side by side for an hour, reviewing the pilot's next phase. He asked thoughtful questions, some that made me bristle. What happens if you miss the performance mark? Are you prepared to double down if regulators push back again? He wanted to test my answers, but I saw the real question underneath. Are you still the woman I laughed at? Or have you become someone I can't control? I met each question with unwavering resolve. By evening, I slipped out for a long walk by the river. The city was alive with winter lights, skating rinks brimming with laughter. I stopped by a bench overlooking the skyline and called Pilar. How's the new rollout going? I asked. She laughed, an exhausted, triumphant sound. We hit a milestone today. Our AI feature flagged its millionth custom learning plan. Proud of you, I said, and I meant it. Her courage reminded me of my own. As I hung up, I spotted an email notification. JV expansion, board draft attached. Barton's board had prepped a formal plan to expand the renewable pilot into a full-fledged venture, pending a quarterly review. The document felt heavy in my hands. I knew signing it would mean deeper entanglement. Shared profits, shared risks, shared reputations. And yet my gut said yes. The challenge was worthy. But was I ready to bet my independence on another promise from a system that had once exiled me with a 2-word email? Position eliminated? Back at the condo, Ivor waited, reading the same document on his phone. We locked eyes over the kitchen counter. You're about to change everything, he said softly. I took his hand, the paper trembling between us. Not just for me, I said. For every woman who's ever been laughed at, underestimated, cast aside. And in that moment, I knew. Tomorrow, I'd sign the JV draft, roll out Berlin's final press push, and set Delaney Communications on a course no one, not even the man who once dismissed my worth, could steer but me. The skyline glittered behind him, a mirror of my own resolve. The next battle was waiting, and I was ready to fight it on my own terms. The morning I signed the joint venture agreement felt strangely quiet, like the city was holding its breath with me. I sat alone in my River North office, the draft spread before me. Every clause, every revenue split, every brand safeguard, months of negotiations condensed into a signature line waiting for my name. I ran my finger over the Barton Financial logo embossed on the header. Ivor's world and mine, fused on paper. The finality of it sent a shiver up my spine. Before I signed, I called Pilar. She was in the middle of a board meeting but stepped out immediately. I'm about to do it, I said. My voice trembled more than I wanted. She laughed, her warmth carrying through the line. Of course you are. You've earned this, Marisol. Just remember, every clause is yours to command, not the other way around. I closed my eyes. Thank you. Text me when it's done. I set the phone down, uncapped my pen, and pressed my signature into the page. My heart raced. Just like that, Delaney Communications was bound to Barton's renewable energy wing. 6 months to prove the model, then expansion. One misstep could tether me tighter than I wanted, but if I pulled it off, the scale would be like nothing I'd touched before. An hour later, I was in Barton's headquarters, the agreement sealed in a folder. Ivor's office was flooded with late morning sun, his desk a sea of spreadsheets and market trend printouts. He looked up as I entered, eyes flicking from the folder to my face. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Did you? I handed him the folder. It's done. He didn't open it. He didn't have to. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice lower. You just made this very real for both of us. It was always real, I shot back, gentler than it sounded. Now it's accountable. He studied me for a moment, like he was trying to memorize every edge of this new version of me. Then he surprised me. His arms encircled my waist, grounding me to the moment. You know, he murmured into my hair. "I'm proud of you, even when you scare me." I pulled back just enough to see his eyes. "Good, stay scared. It means I'm doing it right." We laughed, that small, secret laugh that had once held us together when we were kids with big dreams. But I felt the shift now. Less innocent, more forged. Afterward, I stepped into the renewable energy team's war room. Whiteboards packed with timelines, campaign slogans, target outlets. Sophia Lee met me at the door, her handshake firm. "Congrats," she said. "Your pilot exceeded every benchmark. Now it's real. We're counting on your firm to carry this momentum into expansion." I pulled up a fresh deck on my tablet. Brand storytelling angles, crisis prep playbooks, investor roadshow blueprints. "You'll have my best people, my best strategy, my full voice." She grinned. "Just how I like it." By evening, I drafted the Berlin press release, cross-checked data points, lined up interviews with European trade media. My assistant pinged me with updates. The blog recapping my TechPulse panel had gone semi-viral, driving new traffic to Delaney's site. Leads trickled in from unexpected places: Finland, Scotland, even Dubai. At home, Ivor waited with takeout from my favorite Thai spot, green curry and jasmine rice. He poured wine, an unspoken truce after a week of tense late nights and guarded silences. We sat on the floor, leaning against the couch like we were 22 again. He picked up a spring roll and nudged my shoulder. "Do you ever stop?" I smiled around my wine glass. "If I do, this all stops." He studied me over the rim of his glass. "Do you ever think about how it started?" I laughed softly. "Every day. That email, your laugh." His face fell for a second, regret flitting through his eyes. "I wish I hadn't." I shrugged. "Don't. It fueled me. We're here because of it." He reached for my hand. "I never want to be the reason you feel small again." "You won't be," I said. And I meant it. Later, when he'd drifted off to sleep, I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, the city humming outside the window. Pilar texted, "So? How's it feel?" I typed back, "Like the ground is solid beneath me for the first time, and I'm the one who built it." Her reply came fast, "And you'll keep building." I stared at the skyline, soaring towers, each one a monument to someone who'd refused to shrink. Tomorrow, I'd brief the Renewable Fund's PR team, close Berlin's final investor deck, and prep a feature story for Naomi on what happens after the applause fades. Because the truth was, I'd spent so long proving I could rise. Now, the real question was, could I stay standing when the stakes rose with me? One signature had answered that. Now the world would too. Morning came with the buzz of my phone and the city's low winter hum. I slipped into my office early, the skyline dusted with frost outside my window, my mug of black coffee cooling as I scrolled through the overnight flood of updates. Berlin's investor deck was ready. The final figures looked strong, a clear path to profitability, transparent data policies, and an irresistible hook for press coverage. I reviewed every slide, cross-checking translations, hunting for any detail that could fracture trust across languages and time zones. Next, the renewable energy joint venture. Barton Financial's fund had already sent over a rollout plan, aggressive, ambitious, bordering on reckless if handled without a firm narrative. I dialed Sophia Lee for a check-in. "Let's pace the media push," I told her. "We go too fast, we invite scrutiny. I want Tier 1 placements first, then trade press." "Let our numbers lead the story, not the hype," Sophia laughed. "I knew you'd say that, that's why you're here." As soon as we ended the call, I flipped to the next task, Naomi's follow-up. She'd pitched a second feature for TechPulse, this time about the messier truth behind success. The nights when I doubted every pitch, the moments Ivor's shadow loomed too large, the fractures that came from doing what no one expected me to do. I hesitated. It was one thing to celebrate the victory, another to peel it back. But I owed it to every woman who might read my story and think, she did it because she's perfect. So I typed my reply, "Yes, Let's tell the whole truth. Noon. I led a virtual stand-up with my small team. My VA, Lucas the videographer, my designer, and a new hire, an account manager named Devin, sharp and unflinchingly honest. We reviewed deliverables, the Berlin launch press event, the Renewable Funds Investor Roadshow, and the next pillar of Delaney's brand, an online course for crisis comms training. Devin raised a concern. What happens if the Barton partnership flounders? If performance dips? I appreciated his directness. We pivot. We show our metrics, own our missteps, and tell the market how we're fixing them. Transparency is our leverage. He nodded. Then I'm in. After the meeting, Ivor called. He sounded different. Lighter, but cautious. The board's buzzing, he said. Some love this JV. Some don't like the headlines you're pulling. They're used to being the story. Now they're a footnote in yours. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my second monitor. That's the deal, Ivor. They'll adjust. He sighed, but I caught the glint of pride buried in his worry. Just don't forget who's with you when the applause fades. I smiled softly. You? Always. Before the day ended, I stepped into a small downtown studio with Lucas. We shot the first promo for Delaney's new Crisis Comms course. The script was mine, raw, unpolished, unapologetic. When I lost my job, I learned that crisis isn't something you survive, it's something you shape. I said into the lens. This is how you take back the narrative, one decision at a time. Lucas lowered the camera. You think they're ready for you? I laughed, grabbing my coat. They'll have to be. That night, I sat on the condo balcony with Ivor, the chills settling around us like an old friend. He sipped his whiskey, watching the lights dance on the river. You ever think it'll be enough? He asked quietly. I turned to him, tucking my knees under my chin. It's not about enough. It's about what I do with the power I never thought I could hold. His hand found mine. And if you lose it? I held his gaze, steady as the skyline. Then I'll rebuild. Again, and again, and again. Inside, my phone buzzed with an alert. Berlin's seed round had closed. Pilar's new feature hit 1 million views. Naomi's email landed. Your honesty changes everything. And as I slipped my phone into my pocket, I realized. The real story wasn't that I'd built Delaney Communications. The real story was that I'd become the kind of woman who'd never let anyone, husband, board, or market, decide when my story ended. Tomorrow, I'd sign the Berlin retainer, finalize the crisis course rollout, and write the first lines of a new chapter I was finally brave enough to own. I woke before dawn, my mind already racing ahead of the sun. Today was the day Berlin's retainer would be signed, an anchor client that would legitimize Delaney Communications on the European stage. But more than that, today felt like proof that every late night, every doubt, every clash with Ivor and the Barton board was shaping something far bigger than I'd first imagined when I hit send on that trembling first client email. I dressed quietly, leaving Ivor asleep, and stepped out into the icy wind off Lake Michigan. The city streets glowed with the hush of a weekday morning, neon signs blinking above shuttered cafes. By 7 a.m., I was on a video call with the Berlin founders, reviewing the final service terms. We bantered about the exchange rates, joked about my Chicago snow while they lamented Berlin's drizzling rain. Once you sign, the younger brother said, you're part of this story as much as we are. I smiled. Then let's do it. We signed together, digital signatures looping across the screen. My name glowed beside theirs, a line that would run across pitch decks, press kits, investor updates. My hands trembled. I let them. After the call, I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. One anchor client in the U.S., one abroad, a JV with Barton Financial's Renewable Fund, and a growing brand presence that I'd clawed into existence word by word, press pitch by press pitch. I texted Pilar. Berlin signed. We're global. She replied instantly. You're unstoppable. My VA pinged me. The Crisis Comms course site had gone live overnight. Early signups trickled in. More than we'd projected. Lucas sent me a clip of the promo. My voice, steady and raw, speaking into the camera. You get to decide who you are after the worst happens. It made me shiver, because it was true. Later that morning, I met Ivor at Barton's downtown headquarters to finalize the renewable funds campaign strategy. He stood at the window when I walked in, staring at the skyline that had both tested and carried us. "You did it," he said simply. "You're not just playing the game anymore, Marisol. You're rewriting the rules." I studied him, his tie slightly loosened, his posture softer than the rigid man who once told me not to worry because he'd got me covered. In that moment, he looked like the boy I'd loved before power taught him to wield it like a sword. He stepped closer. "Do you ever think about how we started?" "All the time," I said, my voice calm. "And about who we've become." He touched my cheek. "Promise me you won't lose yourself in this." I almost laughed. I'm finally finding myself. The renewable team joined us, breaking the hush with chatter and presentations. We finalized the rollout calendar, staggered stories, a new microsite, investor webinars, sustainability reports. I drove every point back to impact and authenticity. Our narrative is our moat, I reminded them. It's the truth that makes the strategy work. By late afternoon, Naomi's team called for a follow-up interview, one last piece for the Tech Pulse series. "How does it feel," she asked me, "to know that your story is now a guidepost for women who feel trapped?" I paused, fingers tapping the desk. It feels like responsibility and possibility. Because every time I tell it, I'm reminded I never want to go back to asking permission to be great. When the call ended, I finally allowed myself to sit with the quiet. I let the roar of the city fade into a hush. I let the last doubts dissolve under the weight of everything I'd built from nothing. That night, Ivor and I sat at our kitchen table, papers and laptops scattered between us. For the first time, it didn't feel like his world and mine were colliding. It felt like they were orbiting something new we'd forged together. Respect that had been tempered in conflict. "You know what I realized?" he said, swirling the last sip of his bourbon. "I laughed when you lost your job because I was afraid. Afraid you'd realize you never needed me at all." I reached across the table, took his hand. "I'll always want you, Ivor, but that's different." His smile was sad and full. "I know, and I love you more for it." Tomorrow, I would deliver Berlin's first brand audit, push the Renewable Pilots Investor Update live, and record the next video for the crisis course. And when I lay down that night, it wouldn't be the applause I'd hear in my mind. It would be the echo of my own voice whispering, "You are the architect of this story now. Keep building." I fell asleep believing it. I woke before my alarm, my mind replaying the echo of my own words. "You are the architect of this story now." There was power in that truth, but also a weight. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, made a pot of coffee, and stood at the window as the city blinked awake, street lights flickering out one by one. Berlin's first brand audit was my priority. I spent 2 hours dissecting their messaging, customer journey, and media perception. Each slide told a story, where trust could crack, where stories could fail, and where we could weld new ones together. When I sent it off to the founders, I added a note. "Your brand is your promise. Let's make sure you keep it." Next came the Renewable Pilots Investor Update. The results so far were strong. Placements in 3 major publications, buzz on sustainability blogs, early investor engagement numbers ticking upward. I compiled the metrics into a digestible deck, layering my narrative voice over the charts. Data alone didn't sway markets. Stories did, and stories had become my currency. At noon, I recorded the next module for the Crisis Comms course. Lucas perched behind his camera, giving me the thumbs up. "What's the one thing I want you to remember?" I said into the lens, my voice steady, my eyes unwavering, that when the storm comes, and it will, you do not become someone new. You become who you really are. When we wrapped, I sat on the floor of my office, back against the wall, and felt the tide of exhaustion lap at my bones. This work was everything I'd fought for. And still, it asked for more. My phone buzzed, Pilar. She'd watched the crisis course teaser. "You're terrifying," she texted, "in the best way." I laughed, typing back, "So are you." Mid-afternoon, Ivor's name popped up. "Meet me for coffee?" It read. We hadn't done that in a while. Just coffee. Just us. We met at a small cafe tucked between glass towers. He looked out of place in his tailored suit, the cuffs of his shirt peeking from under his coat sleeves. He didn't waste time. "There's talk," he said, stirring sugar into his cup. A few board members feel like Barton Financial's name is being overshadowed by Delaney's. They're calling it the Marisol effect. I held his gaze. "Do they have a problem with the results?" "No," he said. "But they don't like that you're bigger than the merger now." I leaned back, letting the hum of the cafe soften the tension between us. "Then they'll need to adapt. Or I will. But I'm not stepping back into the shadows, Ivor. Not again." His eyes searched mine for something. Fear, maybe. Or the edge of a boundary he'd once drawn around my ambition. He didn't find it. He nodded. "I know. And I wouldn't want you to. But be ready. They're not all your allies." "They don't have to be," I said. "I didn't get here because everyone opened the door. I got here because I broke it down." The faintest smile tugged at his lips. "God, I love you." "I know," I said, my heart softening. "I love you too." Back at my office, I convened my team. Devin, Lucas, my VA. I laid out the next 6 weeks, expanding the crisis course with bonus live Q&As, prepping Berlin's next investor pitch, drafting the full rollout plan for the renewable JV's Q1 expansion. Devin asked, "What if Barton tries to claim credit? What if they make you the scapegoat if the market dips?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Then we do what we've always done. We own the truth. And we tell it first." We broke late in the evening, each of us tired but brimming with that bright, sharp certainty that comes when you know you're fighting for something bigger than a job or a paycheck. We were building something that couldn't be quietly dismantled in a glass-walled office. That night I sat at my window, watching snow begin to drift through the city lights. Ivor came up behind me, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You're different," he said softly. "So are you," I murmured. "Are we okay?" I turned, pressing my forehead to his. "We're better than okay. Because now we're equals." He smiled, a weary but genuine thing. "Then come to bed." Tomorrow I'd pitch Berlin's next investor event, finalize the renewable roadmap, and draft my next keynote for Naomi's follow-up piece, "What Power Feels Like When It's Yours." And when the lights went out, I knew this much was true. No boardroom, no old fear, no easy betrayal would ever strip that power away again. I'd earned it, and I'd protect it, storm after storm after storm. By the time dawn broke, Chicago was wrapped in a fresh layer of snow, the city muffled and somehow more alive at once. I stood by the window of my River North office, coffee in hand, Berlin's new investor event pitch laid out on my desk like a blueprint for another level. One was about to break through. I rehearsed my call with the Berlin founders for the 100th time. This pitch was more than about capital. It was about cementing our story, the transformation from a scrappy tutoring startup to a trusted, transparent European edtech force. Their success was mine now, too. When the Zoom connected, I locked eyes with both co-founders, the morning sun just beginning to filter through their Berlin windows. I laid out my plan. We don't just invite investors. We show them the future we're building. We highlight the families we're helping, the kids whose lives are changing, the teachers becoming ambassadors. This is not a pitch. It's a promise. When I finished, the older brother just shook his head, grinning. "Marisol, you're more than our comms partner. You're our edge." After we signed off, I sat back, the adrenaline humming. I forwarded the slide deck to Naomi, knowing she'd weave a snippet into her next piece. Then it was straight into the renewable roadmap. I reviewed the quarterly performance benchmarks, press hits, investor growth, public sentiment analysis. I added a bold slide. Brand vulnerabilities. My team needed to know I wouldn't flinch from the hard truths. If Barton Financial's funds stumbled, I wanted the world to see we'd anticipated the risk and built a response before the rumor mill could spin. Devin messaged me mid-edit. "Board chatter again. They want to downplay your name on the rollout. Just a heads up." I sat still, the hum of the city below me like a dare. Then I typed back, "Then our results will make them say it anyway." I hit send, feeling that old echo, my husband's laugh, the cold click of that severance email. But this time it didn't sting. It lit a fuse. Ivor texted an hour later. "Dinner tonight? We should talk." No explanation. Just that. I typed back, "Always." The afternoon blurred into video calls, strategy updates, crisis comms, Q&A signups pinging my phone faster than I could read them. I stole a moment to breathe, alone in my glass box above the city. I thought about what it meant to be both powerful and deeply, relentlessly human. How my story had become a flare in the dark for so many who'd been told no, who'd watched doors slam with a polite smile and a hollow thank you. I didn't know where it would end. Maybe that was the point. That night, I met Ivor at our favorite bistro, a tiny place that had survived 3 recessions and countless new developments. We sat in a corner booth, the smell of garlic and wine softening the hard edges of our day. He reached across the table, his fingers threading through mine. "They're not going to stop pushing back," he said. "You know that, right?" I met his eyes steady. "I do. And you won't let them define you?" I squeezed his hand. "Never again." He exhaled. "Good, because I don't think I've ever been more proud of you, or more terrified for you." I laughed, a sound that was mine alone. "Don't be. I know the storms now. I know how to stand in them." We ate, quietly, the conversation drifting from bored politics to memories of our early days, takeout boxes and cramped apartments, our breath visible as we dreamed of more. We'd built a kingdom out of stubbornness and sleepless nights, but now it was different. Now it was mine too. Back at the condo, I slipped off my heels, dropping my laptop bag by the door. Ivor leaned in the kitchen doorway, watching me with something like awe. "Promise me one thing," he said, voice low. "No matter how big you get, don't let them rewrite you." I walked to him, pressed my palm to his chest. "I won't. They don't hold the pen anymore." He kissed my forehead, and for the first time in years, I felt the promise wasn't to him. It was to myself. Tomorrow, I'd deliver Berlin's event blueprint to their investors, meet the renewable team to defend the brand plan, and finalize the next module for the crisis course. And when the board tried to silence my name, they'd learn what happens when the woman they underestimated refuses to disappear. I didn't just survive losing everything. I became the storm that made the world remember my name. Dawn's first light filtered through the blinds, illuminating a fresh page on my desk and a fresh resolve in my heart. Part 18 would be about consolidation and escalation. I poured coffee into my Delaney mug, its logo a small triumph, and dove into my inbox. First, Barton Financial's Renewable Fund had sent a request, a press strategy update meeting at 9 a.m. I opened my slide deck titled Momentum and Mitigation, a report balancing bold expansion initiatives with contingency plans for potential regulatory or market feedback. Each slide underscored our results: 30% uptick in investor inquiries, 15% growth in fund subscriptions, and a media sentiment score trending 4.5 out of 5. I rehearsed my talking points: acknowledge success, anticipate challenges, pivot with transparency. By 8:50 a.m., I was logging into the video call. Ivor greeted me with a nod on screen, followed by Sophia and 2 senior fund analysts. "Marisol," Sophia began, "the numbers speak for themselves. But we're concerned about an uptick in critiques from competing funds. They're painting us as opportunistic." I leaned forward. "Then we engage directly with our critics. We invite them to roundtable discussions, publish open panels with our data experts, and share case studies of real families benefiting. Transparency will disarm the noise." They typed notes. I saw nods. "Excellent. Let's implement." Sophia smiled. "Your plan feels proactive." I exhaled silently. Momentum maintained. Next, Berlin. I dialed into their event rehearsal, this time in a sleek German co-working hub. They practiced their investor presentation with German precision, and I interjected only where narrative needed polish. Anecdotes of student success, family testimonials, all bridging data with emotional weight. As we wrapped, the younger co-founder said, "Marisol, your story is woven into ours now. We'd be lost without that human thread." My chest tightened. This was more than business. It was legacy making. By afternoon, I ran a live Q&A for my Crisis Comms course. Over 200 participants tuned in: CEOs, PR officers, nonprofit leaders. Questions poured. How do we prepare for brand attacks on social media? What's the first line of defense when misinformation spreads? With each answer, I saw faces nodding in the webcam grid. Professionals hungry for tools I'd learned the hard way. After the session, my VA flagged an urgent email. Naomi Caldwell's team wanted a final commentary for the TechPulse series. Part 3, After the Fall, Before the Flight. They needed 800 words on the tension between vulnerability and power. I drafted immediately, weaving my personal flashpoints with strategic insights. How acknowledging fear becomes the bedrock of leadership. I sent it off with a quiet click. Evening approached, and Ivor suggested we attend a dinner gala, hosted by the Chicago Business Consortium, a networking event brimming with potential clients and partners. I hesitated. Dinner events used to feel like battlefields of small talk and sideways glances. But tonight, I felt different. I wanted to embody the woman who no longer cringed at judgment. We arrived at the banquet hall, lights shimmering, tuxedos and gowns blending into a sea of expectation. Ivor steered me to a circle of executives. Introductions flew. CEOs of manufacturing startups, VPs of international banks, directors of global NGOs. When the host announced me, a first, Marisol Delaney, founder of Delaney Communications, I stood, heart thundering. Applause filled the hall. I raised my glass, delivering an impromptu toast. To the stories we tell and the truths we live, may our authenticity lead the way. The room responded with smiles and clinking glasses. As the gala wound down, a junior executive approached, introduction trembling on his lips. Ms. Delaney, your crisis session today was transformative. I'm launching a nonprofit next quarter. Could we discuss consultancy? I exchanged business cards, my chest swelling with possibility. Late that night, Ivor and I returned home, the city quiet beneath a blanket of stars. I paused on the balcony, the lights like constellations in human form. He joined me, wrapping his arm around my waist. Look at what you've built, he whispered. I pressed my head to his shoulder, closing my eyes. We've built. Together. He kissed the top of my head. Tomorrow, the real work begins. And it did, because every summit, literal or metaphorical, was just a waypoint. The real story was the climb itself, the storms weathered, and the power found in every step upward. My name was no longer an echo in someone else's boardroom. It was the anthem of my own making. The winter thaw arrived as a promise. Snow melted into rivers running down skyscraper glass, and I felt the same liquid momentum inside me, ready to reshape landscapes beyond the skyline. Today's agenda was simple yet seismic. Finalize the nonprofit consultancy proposal from last night's gala, debrief Berlin's post-event investor feedback, and prepare a keynote for the upcoming Sustainable Future Summit, where I'd represent both Delaney Communications and Barton Financial's Renewable Fund. I began with the nonprofit lead's email, drafting a tailored consultancy proposal, a phased approach combining brand narrative workshops, crisis preparedness training, and a digital launch campaign. I offered a sliding scale for nonprofits, ensuring accessibility without undercutting Delaney's value. I closed with a note. Your mission deserves clarity as powerful as your vision. Hitting send felt like sending a lighthouse beam into fog. Next came Berlin. The founder's follow-up call revealed glowing feedback. Investors appreciated the human stories woven into the deck, and 2 European venture funds were in discussions for additional rounds. I drafted a press update for their site, From Seed to Scale, How a Storyteller Built Bridges Across the Atlantic. Ivor's midday message pinged, Summit briefing at 3. He'd set up a joint prep session for our keynote at the Sustainable Future Summit. We met in a glass-walled boardroom, walls reflective enough to catch our anxious faces. Our session had 3 goals: align our narratives, coordinate our speaking points, and decide who would open and close the talk. Ivor suggested he begin with Barton Financial's historical commitment to sustainability, passing the mic to me to illustrate how narrative transforms policy into action. I counter-proposed. I'd open with the personal narrative, how loss ignited purpose. Then he'd anchor with data and structural vision. He paused, measuring the balance between ego and harmony. Finally, he nodded. Your story first, he agreed. Then my numbers. We practiced transitions, timing, and call-to-action slides. Invest in story, invest in people, invest in planet. By the end, our partnership felt seamless. A duet refined by years of dueling perspectives. Afternoon brought a live stream Q&A for my Crisis Comms course alumni. Questions that once would have flustered me. How do I manage internal leaks? What's the first social media response to misinformation? Now rolled off my tongue as instinct. I shared real-world examples. Pilar's API mishap, the renewable funds competitor critiques. Each answer was a map guiding others through turbulence. As evening fell, I sat at my kitchen counter, the city lights dancing through the window. Ivor joined me, offering tea instead of our usual wine, a small gesture acknowledging the next day's summit's gravity. We reviewed our flight details, slides on the tablet, wardrobe choices, sustainable fabrics to align with the summit's ethos. We double-checked our talking points. Empathy, transparency, collaboration. He looked at me, his voice soft. Tomorrow, we change more than perceptions. I nodded. We change possibilities. I felt the weight of 19 chapters behind me, each one a step toward here, the brink of a global stage. And as I closed my eyes that night, I whispered into the dark. This story still has more chapters than anyone imagined. Tomorrow, I'd prove it. The morning of the Sustainable Future Summit dawned golden and clear, a rarity in Chicago's winter. I stood at my apartment window, the city spread out beneath me, its arteries pulsing with possibility. My reflection stared back from the glass, a woman forged in adversity, tempered by loss, now standing on the cusp of the world's attention. I clipped a small emerald pin to my lapel, the Barton Financial logo enameled in the center, flanked by Delaney Communications engraved in tiny script. A silent testament to collaboration, resilience, and shared vision. Ivor texted, "Coffee downstairs?" The simple message felt momentous. I joined him in the lobby, where he waited with 2 lattes in reusable mugs. We rode the elevator in silence, the hum of cables echoing our steady heartbeat. Outside the convention center, a sea of banners proclaimed, "Invest in people, invest in planet." Volunteers directed attendees, and media crews snapped photos of the golden atrium. We walked through the entrance, badges dangling, and I felt the weight of 19 parts of my life compress into this moment. Backstage, Naomi awaited with her camera crew. She gave me a quick hug. "Ready to own the stage?" she whispered. I nodded, voice steady. "Let's do it." The MC introduced us. "Please welcome Ivor Barton, CEO of Barton Financial, and Marisol Delaney, founder of Delaney Communications." Applause thundered as we strode onto the stage. Side by side, partners in every sense. Ivor began. He spoke of Barton Financial's century-long commitment to sustainable investment, the urgency of climate change, the power of capital to catalyze progress. His voice was measured, authoritative. Then I took the podium. The spotlight warmed my cheeks. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, recalling every setback, every doubt, every moment my husband's laughter had fueled my ascent. "Good morning," I began, voice rich with emotion. 2 years ago, my world collapsed with a 2-word email, "Position eliminated." My husband laughed. And in that laughter, I found my fuel. Gasps rippled through the audience. Journalists scribbled notes, cameras zoomed in. I continued. That day, I had 2 choices: shrink or rise. I chose to rise. I traced my journey, from Halcyon Tech's glass tower to a rented desk in River North, from Pilar's startup crisis to Berlin's seed success, from Barton Financial's skepticism to a joint venture, and now to this stage. I spoke of the pilot campaign's triumphs, the crisis course empowering hundreds, the nonprofit ambition lighting new fires. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Then I spoke of the truths I'd unearthed, that independence is forged through collaboration, that vulnerability births strength, and that the stories we own can reshape industries and societies. Today, I said, raising my hand, we stand at the threshold of transformation. Invest in people, those with vision, tenacity, and unyielding purpose. Invest in planet, our home, our legacy. But above all, invest in narrative, because in every corner of this world, the story you tell can become the change you seek. The auditorium erupted in applause. Standing, roaring, a tide of affirmation. Together, Ivor and I stepped forward for the closing call to action. Join us, he said, in forging a future where capital and compassion walk hand in hand. And where every voice, I added, holds the power to shape tomorrow. We exited the stage to thunderous cheers, enveloped by a chorus of commitment. Executives, activists, investors, and dreamers alike. Backstage, Naomi wrapped me in a triumphant embrace. "You did it," she whispered. I felt tears prick my eyes, a mixture of relief, pride, and the exquisite release of culmination. That night, Ivor and I returned home, the city lights shimmering like distant stars. We shared a quiet dinner, the table bare of papers for the first time in months. He reached across, took my hand. "You changed everything," he said softly. I smiled, exhaustion and exhilaration warring in my chest. "We changed everything." He kissed my hand. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I laughed, the sound light and free. Because this was my story. Complete, but not finished. A finale that felt like a beginning. And I knew the next chapters would be even greater if only I kept writing them on my own terms.